Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Take Your Points. I'm your host, Roland Scott. We're looking at the All-Ireland final and Tyrone's incredible win over Mayo. And our guests are Paddy Tally, who was down manager last year, but he was also the coach in 2003 when Tyrone won their first All-Ireland, and Cal Carville, the Gaelic life columnist. And our other guest is Aoife Ní Chaiside, who's on to talk about Antrim's intermediate camogie victory over Kilkenny, and also Armagh's defeat to Wexford. We're joined now by Derry camogie Aoife Ní Chaiside. And Aoife, thanks for coming on the show. I wanted to get an opinion from outside of Antrim and Armagh about the results at the weekend. You've obviously know these teams well, but I wanted to first start to ask you, what do you think the key was to Antrim's win?
Well, I think the key to Antrim's success was the whole team performance on the day. You know, every player played well, from goalkeeper right out. They showed up and they brought the work rate and the intensity on the day, and you knew that from the start. They just looked so sharp. Their forwards and just were on fire, and the defence were super tight. So just from the get-go, the whole team performance was absolutely brilliant. They're very professional setup, with their backroom team, and the strength and conditioning work all done. And I just think they looked, like they were structured and they knew that they had a game plan. And I just think that the whole team played well and performed on the day, and substitutes coming in that had an impact as well. Just the work rate from the players and performing on the big day. They were coming in with belief that they could beat Kilkenny because they had played them earlier. The first round in the championship, actually, it was a home match, and where they beat them, and probably didn't perform to the best that day. So they built up over the championship and only just improved game to game. And then when they had that one over Galway in the semi-final, they just had a belief that they could go on and win it, and they showed up. You could maybe believe, and then, I don't know, nerves or just not performing the day, but they brought everything to the table with them on Sunday and put in a superb performance that everybody is ranting about, really. How sharp that they were looking and how well they performed.
What or who perhaps impressed you most in the Antrim team?
I suppose the thing that most impressed me about Antrim was their work rate. All the players, defence and forwards, the movement that was going on in the forward line, from watching it, never stopped, creating space, and the work rate on the puck outs and breaking balls and things like that there. Probably made Kelly's performance, because just scoring with the scores that she got, individual scores, creating scores for other players, winning puck outs, tracking back and helping the defence out as well, and then breaking forward, was just absolutely brilliant. She's a class player, just strength wise, speed wise and skills wise. She has everything going for her, so she performed well on the day and totally deserving of player of the match. But just overall in general, as I say, the whole Antrim team play was very, very good. Their defence as well was very strong, and any sort of threat that Kilkenny had, although they did get 2 goals, I suppose one from the short or the close range free, and another later on in the match. It doesn't really reflect on the defence, for Antrim's defence, because I thought that they were very good, very tight, and cut all threat out very early on. Whereas at the other end, it was the opposite. Antrim were out in front, and any time they got through, they looked very, very threatening, which Kilkenny, I thought, struggled to cope with.
Aoife, Armagh lost to Wexford. How do Armagh bounce back from that result?
I suppose it'll be very difficult for Armagh to take the defeat because, being reigning champions from last year, beating Cavan in the final, they had a bit of belief that they could win it again. They've done it in the past, so they had that experience. But it was the 4th time for them to play in Wexford, and the 3 previous times they had, they were beaten. So they were hoping to take it, to them this time, which they did. They performed absolutely brilliant. The athleticism and the skill that was in show in the junior final was absolutely brilliant as well. Some brilliantly taken scores, but unfortunately Wexford just ran away with it in the final stages. But it really could have went either way, but I suppose that's what they can take from it, like reflect on it and watch back and learn from it, and then, you know, group together again, go again next year. There's a mixture of youth and more experienced players, so it's just about, you know, everybody sticking at it and bringing maybe like adding players to the panel, always trying to add 2 or 3 or 4 more players to the panel that will just enhance and buy into the whole team setup.
If I also wanted to know, what did these results mean for Ulster Camogie?
Well, I suppose it's a good sign that there are teams in Ulster reaching the finals. Like last year, although I know the intermediate or the seconds teams couldn't play, you know, it was down against Antrim in the intermediate last year, Cavan against Armagh last year, and again this year Antrim and Armagh representing Ulster in the final, and, you know, on the big stage, the All-Ireland final day. So I suppose it's a healthy sign of Camogie and Ulster. Like Down had a good championship run this year in the senior championship, and they'll be hoping to, you know, to improve in that, you know, break out from the group stages next year. And Antrim will be up there, you know, playing at the top level as well. So, you know, I think it's a good sign that the Ulster, you know, Camogie and Ulster is at a healthy enough place and on the up.
And finally, you're a Derry camog. What did Derry have to do to catch up with Antrim and Down, who are now at senior level?
I think Derry have to do a lot of work to catch up. You know, last year and this year we reached the quarter-final stages and we're beaten, obviously, both quarter-finals. So we're finding it difficult at the minute. I suppose it takes, you know, just looking at the teams that won, so Galway and Wexford and Antrim this year, you know, it's a whole team effort, the whole package. So, you know, your strength and conditioning, everything that goes along with it, nutrition, all that advice to go along with it, and then just getting the players to buy into that there. So having that there set in place, you know, with your management, and getting players, all the club, you know, players to buy into that and to believe, to want to, you know, setting goals. Obviously, we've reached quarterfinals, right? We want to go a step further this year, and sticking to it. I suppose, you know, we look to Antrim now and we look to Down, you know, that are playing at the top level now, and saying, how can we get there? You know, what do we have to do to get there? So I suppose it's just about getting together again, refocusing, and you know, every year brings new challenges. So this past few years we've had girls coming in and girls leaving, you know, on short spaces of time, but I think you need to get, you know, girls to try and buy into it long term. You know, this is what we're aiming for in the next 2 to 3 years, or whatever it may be, and bringing younger players onto the panel at all times, up from minors, and getting them a bit of experience at the senior level as well. So that's a whole pile of things. If you get all them things in place, we'll be doing well. But I hope, you know, just that we can, I suppose, improve in the next couple of years, improve from the last couple of years.
Aoife, thanks for your time.
Gur míle maith Ronan, gur maith.
So our guests this week are Paddy Tally and Cal Garvel, Gaelic Life Comma. So Paddy, I have you in obviously because you, former coach at Tyrone, you were there in 2003. But to start, let's just talk about the initial reactions as a Tyrone man. How do you feel about that win, Tyrone's incredible win over Mayo at the weekend?
Hi, we're still on the high. It's just a wonderful feeling we have in all throughout the county at the minute. You know, I think there was a real sense of you know, confidence get into the game. You know, we felt that these fellas were good enough to win the All Ireland, and seeing us over, it was like, God, we're back on top again. You know, that is really it. Like after 13 years in Tyrone, back number 1 in Ireland. That's quite hard to believe even yet. There's that wee thing, and you're saying, God, we're number 1. But it's wonderful today, and the people are on a high yesterday, and even this morning chatting to a few people, they're still breathing in the success, and they were so proud of the players and the management and everybody associated with the team.
The atmosphere, is it similar to the previous years of success?
I think it is. I think it nearly goes back to the first one. You know, I think there's been such a gap. You know, when you go for that length of time, and but supposed to be one of the first one. If you look back, it was the first for everybody. But there's a whole new generation of people. Say if you're 20 years old or 19 or 20, this is like the first one all over again because you're only 6 or 7 the last time, and you wouldn't remember much about it. But anybody's a teenager now, or late teenager, even early 20s, are now getting this feeling for the first time, really. So it's all new again. There's a whole new generation of children rocking up, and these are our heroes. So there's it's just lovely at the minute, and we're delighted.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask Cal, did you think the game went expected? We spoke last week with Paul Devlin about how the game was going to go. Did it go as you thought it was going to go?
No, is the short answer. I thought Mayo would have been, had more street smarts than what they did show. We talked, and the blueprint was put down in the Kerry game. If you were to look at that and say, how are Tyrone going to set up? How are they going to play? How are we going to counteract that? Look at the Kerry match, and they did the exact same thing. They brought the intensity in that middle third. They invited the Mayo boys onto them, and they turned them over and broke at pace. And we discussed on the last time we were here about Mayo taking shots from distance, getting into that D and kicking it over from distance, and that would draw the Tyrone defence out. That didn't happen. It was interesting. I thought when we discussed around Aidan O'Shea and maybe kicking in diagonal balls long to him, they just made the wrong decisions. They kicked it maybe 20 or 30 yards as opposed to going back to midfield and kicking in those long balls that Armagh were synonymous with back in the day. And they just didn't work Tyrone out at all, and they looked devoid of ideas coming down the stretch at the end. And to miss 6 goal chances, like if you were to say to a Mayo man on Saturday morning you're going to get 6 goal chances, you'd be thinking O'Shea's going to go up the steps of the Hogan here. But I haven't seen. They butchered them. There's no other way to describe it. The converse of that, when those clutch moments, and again we talked about McKenna, those clutch moments, people were saying, why is he still on the field? He's made mistakes. He's not playing well. When that ball was flicked to him from Kilpatrick, he went straight down the throat of the Mayo defence. Hanley, again we talked about, there's maybe a mistake in him. He rushed out to him, flicked down the side, and it was a textbook goal, an easy tap-in for the Dazzler, as he's now being referred to again. And Tyrone had all the answers. Mayo really didn't pose enough questions. I was expecting a whole lot more from Mayo. It wasn't how I thought it was going to pan out. Tyrone looked like the more experienced team that had been there and done it before. And we're looking at a Mayo team who have an abundance of experience, and obviously an experience of losing finals, but they were in the final last year, and it looked like Tyrone were the team that had all the experience and all the wisdom and the old head on the shoulders, and they came up with the answers. And was it what I expected? No, it wasn't. But did I expect a Tyrone win? I thought they'd eke it out, but at the end they were comprehensive.
Paddy, do you agree? Did the game go as you expected? Were you surprised, or with how it went?
Not really. To be honest, I thought the first half was super. Sitting watching the game, at the game myself, it was a great first half. It was a wee bit touchy at the start. Both teams were a little bit cagey, but then it opened up. And by half time, it was really, looking back, it was a real good half of football. Plenty of chances, plenty of incidents, plenty of intensity, plenty of mistakes, which makes it exciting. But that's the way both teams play. They do take risks. They play a very open type of game where there's lots of, if you look at the game, how many last gasp tackles were there from both teams, where somebody would get a tackle on or send them down the line and turn the ball over, and then it'd just be helter-skelter. So there was that wee bit of madness early in the game. But by half time, I felt that Tyrone had a grip of it. I just thought Mayo were starting to become a wee bit void of ideas, and Tyrone looked much more comfortable. Again, some of our outside shooting in the first half was great. We really, really good scores. Kieran McGarry scored a brilliant point. Darren McCurry scored a really good point from the right wing. And we just looked as if Nell had scored 2 free kicks, like his first and 2 long range frees, and we're settling really well. The third quarter was a worry for us, because this was all Mayo. It really was Mayo coming at us with everything they had, but they didn't convert. And they had the chances to really bring the game back and make it a real contest. But I think that when we come to the second water break, I think Mayo were gone. I think generally they kept coming back at us, but we got the goal. Cahill had come on, scored the goal, and really at that stage Tyrone could play the game on their terms right to the end of the match. And that's how it worked out. I think that every time Mayo come up and got a point, we go back down the field and get another point. And then, as I said, as referred to there, the goal, once Darren Maguire got the goal, it was game over. And it really was the last 10 minutes was a breeze. But so, I think the same feelings are there with Mayo. There's a lack of belief that they can actually get across the line. And I think I did predict the game, if Tyrone could get 3 or 4 points up, they would win the game comfortably, because I think all the doubts are there in Mayo. They just can't get over that. Conversely, if Mayo had been up 2 or 3 points going into the last 5 minutes, it would be very difficult for Tyrone, because Mayo would have done everything in their power not to lose that one. Where they got their foot on Tyrone, I think they would have done what they did into Dublin. They would have kicked on, but we hit the front at the right time, and it left us very comfortable.
Yeah, I felt that halfway through the first half that Mayo had lost it. They just weren't scoring. They didn't. I just felt like me, and the way Tyrone players, the way they carry themselves, it feels like the 03 teams, you know, that were so confident and they believed in everything that they did.
That comes from probably the environment that's been created around them. I think that they're now in the backroom team. You have Colin Holmes, you have Joe McMahon, you have Brian Dooher, 3 All-Ireland winners. Start. You know, and those boys are all there in 03 and 05 and 08, part of those teams, successful teams. That breeds confidence. You have lads there, you have Fergal and you have Brian who managed the team that won under 21 All Ireland. That breeds confidence. It just is a really good environment around them, and they also seem to be very happy as a group. They're tight, they're good friends, and that's a big part of it as well. There doesn't seem to be any divisions in the camp. In fact, it seems a very united camp, you know. Yeah. And I think as the year goes on, it's like everything else, you get momentum and confidence grows, and that's what happens.
Kyle, any of the Tyrone players stand out for you?
Well, I think ultimately Saturday was coronation for a lot of these players who maybe weren't the superstars that you would associate with a Clifford or maybe a Lee Keegan and those type of boys that you would see day in, day out. But certainly the McGearys, the Myers, the Morgans, McKennas of this world, McCorrys, that's everyone's talking about them now. And I certainly think in the Kerry game, they grew as the game went on, and their stature grew. And even coming into the All-Ireland final, again, the way they conducted themselves throughout, from management right down to each of the players, they were coming into Croke Park All-Ireland final day, and there was that air of confidence about them. You know, the shoulders were back, they were relaxed. They knew that they had to go out, and if they played the way they were capable of playing, they were going to win. I thought, like Hampsey's point, just one example, a microcosm of the game, and he's done it twice against Kerry, and then on Saturday against Mayo. He went up the right hand side, and it wasn't an easy kick by any stretch. And I have said before to teammates, if you've got a single digit in your back, don't be shooting. But I think he showed like it was an incredible score outside of the boot, and you just followed the ball with the camera angle, and over the bar it went. And there was that confidence throughout the team. Sludden again outside of the boot score was beautiful. McGeary, as Paddy's talked about, again it was coming down with snow on it, but went over the bar. And even if we look to the second half, when Mayo were putting the pressure on and Tyrone went down the field, and they did miss a couple of very scoreable chances. Like look at McShane's free when they went to Hawkeye and it went over the post. That wasn't given. And then also McKenna took a great mark and then missed it straight in front of the post. And I thought this is going to give Mayo a bit of oxygen, but it didn't happen. They had that composure to go back down. Then they got the goal, and as Paddy says, the game was over. But these are, I think also it's talking about superstars and name recognition now. Kilpatrick, he had his Peter Andre moment when he took his top off, and there was a bit of swooning in pubs around Tyrone, no doubt. But like he was fantastic, and Brian Kennedy as well. Names you wouldn't have known before, and a lot of people, even when they won Ulster, wouldn't have known. They weren't household names, but certainly they're on the tip of everyone's tongue this week, and fair play to them. They're on merit, and they were, at the end of the day, the outfought and outthought of an experienced Mayo team, and they definitely deserved all the plaudits.
Funny you mentioned Roger Keenan earlier this year said to me that he felt confident about the Tyrone team because they finally got a midfield. His issue was that they didn't have a ball winners at the centre, like big, strong, tall catchers, you know, I suppose. Yeah. But harking back to the good old days, and that did sort of bear out certainly at certain stages in the game where they did able to win that midfield ball.
Absolutely, and it allowed Niall to go long. Mayo were giving Tyrone the short ball a lot of the time, and it suited Tyrone very well too, because once you get possession there's so many good footballers in those areas that they don't cough it up. They'll work it and they'll work the ball back and they'll switch the play and they'll go down the far side, and that happened numerous times. And that relationship between Niall Meyler and Harte and Sludden and Maguire and Hampsey and McKieran, all those boys are so comfortable in that area. When they pick up a ball up there, you can nearly guarantee they'll work something and they'll get somebody to run and they'll attack in numbers. But it also allows that they can put the ball down, stick it out to the middle of the field, clear your lines, and even if they do lose it down there, there's a long way to go for Mayo to come back through that defence. So there's a method in going long, even if they don't sometimes win the ball. But the chance where Conn Kilpatrick pulled the ball out of the clouds, put it through, was to McKenna and the goal. So the catch was fantastic, and that's so good for Conn. Conn's really, this is his first year embedding himself into the team, and he's been around the squad now for a couple of years. But we probably all know the potential he has as a player. But that'll do him the world of good yesterday too. Like.
Yeah, we spoke last week about the development of these players, and one of the things I was sort of keen to head on, and that's why Paul was in, and your colleague Gavin McGilly, was about how the underage teams in Tyrone have helped these players, but also the Sigerson success, and you had success with these players, and when you won the Sigerson, how much do you think that's helped them, that they're able to get across, win with St Mary's and then go on with Tyrone?
I think it's helped develop them, and the Sigerson is very difficult to win. That's the first thing. It's a brutally hard competition to win. We got it that year, and it was great to win it. It was a long time coming, but we got it. But there was then 3 or 4 fellas. You had Connor and you had Kieran and McShane, who really have grown from that, especially Connor. If there's one player to say who's grown enough for that, is Connor, because he was captain of that team. Probably at the time, when I made him captain of the team, it was basically felt that he had his attitude was superb to training, but it's matured him as a player and as a leader. And I think if you're looking back on the year, especially in the Kerry game, and you see Connor didn't put a foot wrong the last 2 matches. We've always known Kieran Maguire is a special talent. Not maybe the most skillful player in the world, but he's a fierce warrior. And he will never let the team down, and he'll always be there when it comes to it, and he'll drag everybody with him. And then you have Cahill, who just gets better and better, and every time Cahill comes on, he's made a massive impact. Like to come on Sunday or Saturday night and get the goal that turns the game. Now, we needed that goal. That was the third quarter, that's the only score we got. And we needed a goal, and for Cahill first touch, back of the net, and all of a sudden then the team went up to come on against Kerry and hit a goal in 3. Those massive impact games. You think of a game against Kerry, we lose one game by a point, McShane scores 1-3. You're talking big game-changing moments here. So those boys there too, but that team, I think by the final whistle, there was 7 of the team that finished were St Mary's lads. If you put Conn Kilpatrick into that, and you put Paddy and Niall Sludden and Niall Morgan into that mix, so there's 7 lads in the finish that are all ranch lads, but they all know how to play that type of football. And I've also said to them over the years, if you can play at St Mary's and compete, you can play anywhere at the top level, because you have to play above yourself. You're just going to have to make it happen. And that was I don't know, I'm not saying that to anybody, but they felt that there's chemistry there among them, and that may lead that they know how to play that type of running game where they work together. But listen, that's complemented by Padraig Hampsey. You mentioned I think Padraig Hampsey has been a magnificent move to make him captain of the team. He's injury free for the first time in a few years, and he just airs confidence. You mentioned the point, but not even that there. He went on Tommy Conroy, who's a very good player, very, very quick. And I know Tommy got a couple of early runs on him, but after that was it. He slowed him down, he marked him, he took a brilliant man forward of the game. He did the very same thing in the last game too. He's just a fantastic footballer and a really good leader. And we have that's the beauty of this thing. You mentioned players that hasn't been worried about this year. We've got lads now that are stepping up, and they all want to be part of that team. And they know themselves, and Brian knows, boys know that this is just one. They're going to have to work even harder to stay there in the future, but that's for another day.
I'm sort of keen to focus on what the winning or the losing of the game was, Cal. Do you think it was the defence of Tyrone, or was it the confidence of Tyrone, or the Derry in me says that it was Mayo kicked themselves out of it, but what do you think?
I think it was a combination of everything. Ultimately, if you look at, and I continually talking about clutch moments in the game, I've talked about the McKenna run and the goal from McCurry, which was massive, the McShane goal, but you have to fault the goalie, I think, on the McShane goal. If you had seen that in an under-14 game, you would have been shouting at your goalie to stay on his line. He had to stay on his line. They wouldn't have had the chance as a wee flick, and he was in no man's land. He was gone, the ball was in the back of the net, and he was standing around the 14. Hanley's got, there's history there in terms of All-Ireland finals and mistakes, and I did, not to take the credit for getting something right here in terms of my predictions, but I did say there's potentially a fault in him. You never, maybe previous years would have targeted Morgan and thought there was a mistake in him, but he was as safe as houses. You were assured that he wasn't going to make a mistake on Saturday. So that was one of the clutch moments. Obviously the penalties absolutely huge in terms of that momentum shift. And there's 2 points in it at that stage. You know, get that penalty and Mayo were 1 up and then they can push on. But I don't know what he was thinking going for the top corner. Yes, it would have been Harry Maguire in the Euros, looked great and everything, but ultimately put the head down, stand over it and put your foot through it. And the wee shimmy, it was all wrong, but you know, that's pressure, and it's all right saying that sitting here, but when there's pressure and everything going on with Mayo at that stage, it's easy to criticise what he did wrong. Ultimately, even going back to the start of the game, when O'Shea had the chance, missed it again, and I know Brawley had said it was an easy chance, but it would have been easy if he had dummied it inside and then he was one-on-one with Morgan, but even to do that is difficult. But Conor Loftus had that chance where he had an open goal, I think it was Walsh on the turn, and Morgan saved it. The goal was, you had Sludden coming in from the left hand side. He was maybe a foot in from the post, all of this side of the goal, to open his body up and, you know, slot it into the right hand corner. Again, easier said than done here, but that was a massive moment in the game. Get that goal, you got the 2 points at the start, you're on a roll, and goals give so much oxygen to teams. There was and obviously the pressure that Tyrone put on, but there was a combination of errors upon errors from Mayo in really seminal moments in the game that could have turned it, whereas when Tyrone had those seminal moments, those clutch moments, they took it. McShane and McCurry's goal were the epitome of it, and at the end of the day, that's why Sam Maguire's up here in Tyrone. So but a great game in terms of incident and a lot to talk about, and it was a thoroughly enjoyable football game, but Mayo again will be left scratching their heads, and there'll be a lot of what ifs in the west of Ireland today. Yeah,
Paddy, do you sort of agree with that? You know, Tyrone just more clinical, I suppose.
Yeah, like just you're right. Like, you know, I think the Conor Loftus thing, you didn't see Nell Sludden coming across. I think Nell there's some block. Like, you look back at that, like he came out of nowhere. Loftus thought he'd open net, and all of a sudden Sluddy sliding across and clearing off the line. That was a massive moment. You know, that's Sluddy for you. Like, just brain, get back here. He reads the game so well. But like that's crazy. The Aidan O'Shea one, I think he still would have struggled, even if he had stumbled back inside, because Nell was right on him. He would have a lot of work to do. He was on his left foot, and had him well closed. No guarantee to score that. But I thought there was 2 in the second half. I thought Tommy Conroy surely had the option of shooting or squaring the ball to O'Shea, who was standing between the 6-yard box and the 13-metre line for a thing. And the other one where was becoming, the boy shot on the angle too, where he again had O'Shea squared. Was it? Yeah. You know, you're talking, these are goal chances, you can't miss those. And that's where Mayo have failed over the years, and they just can't seem to address that. And I think they're probably in a worse place now than they've been for a long time, because they would have seen this one as the one. It wasn't Kerry, it wasn't Dublin, it wasn't Donegal. This was what they felt was the year to do it. And maybe the pressure of expectation is just weighed too heavily on their shoulders.
Yeah. The next thing I was going to ask, what next for Mayo? Like, what do you think, where do they go from here?
If you're employing me as a consultant, well, the first thing I think is, and I don't mean this in a harsh way, there's too many players that the scars are too deep. They've had too many defeats. Now, you can keep saying we'll go back and we'll come back and we'll win it, but when you've been beaten so many times, there's got to this stage where you have to think, right, the baggage is too heavy. I think that James Horn will reflect on his own position. He's now managed the team to lose his 4 All-Ireland finals. You'd wonder yourself, I need to think this is not for me. You know, and I think that just flip on and say, I think about Tyrone. As I talked earlier on about the confidence these young fellas have in the management team is around them, because they're winners and they've been there and they've done it, they're players, and they believe in what they're doing. Whereas if you're a Mayo player now, what would make you believe we're going to win it next year? Because all you've known is there's players in here that have lost them. You have a manager who's lost them. So my immediate reaction, and this is not knee-jerk, I just think reflect on whether they think it's the best way forward to continue on with the same model. You'd have to change differently. I think there's good young players in Mayo, and they're showing they're good players, but it might take a disconnect from, you know, you have to sort of get rid of a lot of the baggage, and that might mean a change of personnel, a change of player base, and start and say, right, let's go and look at a manager who knows how to win All Ireland. And I would know, if I was a Mayo man, I would say you need to go to look for somebody who knows how to win All Irelands, who's a cold eye view, that's not tied to any club maybe not tied to the county, wouldn't have an emotional attachment, and just clear the decks and go, right, let's be ruthless here about it. Because there's players there. It's not that long ago since Mayo won another 21 title. There's good players there. There's a manic Mayo support who do anything to win it. But it may take away the emotion here, cut to the chase and say, let's be clinical about this here. This hasn't been working. Let's look elsewhere.
Yeah, and Tyrone made the massive decision last year to get rid of a man who'd been there since '03, a huge seismic decision, and then they go and win the All Ireland.
That's right. And listen, it happened in Dublin too. Remember when Paddy Tally was the heart and soul and the blood of Dublin, but he wasn't successful, so had to go, bring in a ruthless man like Paddy Tally who just changed the culture. And Paddy Tally stayed for 2 years, done a job, and then in comes Jim Gavin, away they go. And at Kerry do it every 2 or 3. If you don't win All Ireland 3 years in Kerry, you're toast. Bring somebody else in. Even you win a couple of All Irelands, you're toast if you don't win the next one. But this is harsh reality of high performance sport. If you look at, and this has not been any way, I've learned this myself from being a manager. If you're not successful, people ask questions, why are you not winning? And you can make it all the reasons, excuses the day you want, and you can rationalise your own mind, but ultimately people want to know why you're not successful. And I think that we now are in a position, this is high performance sport. Whatever way you want to look at it, okay, we talk about amateur. It's only amateur in the sector, it's an amateur sport, players don't get paid. But the preparation and the backroom and work that's going on here, this is as good as what you're going to get at top level professional sport. And sometimes you just have to look at it as a business, a cutthroat business, where you say, how are we going to get success? And ultimately, top managers manage good teams. So I think that's if you're from Mayo at the moment, you'd be looking to say, how can we bring something different to this to help us win it?
And what do you think's next for Tyrone? Like, what can they defend their title? How do they build on this, or can they build on this, or what's next for them?
It's going to be very difficult. It's going to be really, really difficult, and that's to be honest. We've been there before. We won it in 3. We weren't about it in 4. We won it in 5. We weren't there in 6 and 7. We won it in 8, and we haven't been there since. So let's be really honest about it. This is going to be really difficult, because now Tyrone changed from being the hunter to the hunted. This was as simple as a cliche, but it is true. Everybody now is eyeing up, how can we take Tyrone down next year? You think about it, there's 4 Ulster teams in the Division 1. There's another 2 in Division 2, so 6 out of the 9 are in the top 2 leagues. So Ulster Championship next year is going to be a real battlefield again. You have a Cavan team, I know took the drop this year, but they won the Ulster Championship last year, so they'll fancy themselves to come back and give it a rattle. So Ulster next year is going to be a really tight thing. And then you have the teams now that are South Dublin's going to be rejuvenated. They're going to come back with a bounce. Like people say they're on the way, and maybe they're just tired. Maybe they've just had a long run. Maybe a lot of those players that maybe took a year out, like a Jack McCaffrey, Paul Mannion, Eric Lowndes, might decide they know we're going to go back at it again. Obviously Kerry will be stung, they'll be wanting to come back at it again. Galbally and Mayo will always raise their hopes. So winning All Ireland isn't easy. So I think the challenge next year for Tyrone will be, how can we do something differently to revitalise and re-energise and get the hunger back up again? Because, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but I've seen this in the past where when a team wins, you wouldn't believe how many of the players are actually happy and they're content. And I'm not talking about the number 27 and 28 and the 33 or 34 in the squad who never got a game. I'm talking in the top 15, in the first 15, who now in the deep heart of hearts know that's it. And you may think, no, they'll go again, but maybe they just got content. So the big challenge for Fergal and Brian and the backroom team next year, how do we revitalise this, set new targets, paint a different picture of what success looks like? Because they're going to have to find that, and they're going to have to find different ways of motivating these players, because they've reached the pinnacle, now. And this is where they have to look towards what Dublin did. How did Dublin go back year on year, keep going at it? And the reason is that if you look at the Dublin team that won the first one, maybe the first of the 6th to the last one, there's only 3 or 4 players were still there. Every year they're bringing in new players. They were really good players, weren't getting a kick of the ball, and they're just bringing in fresh lads to drive it on. And Jim Gavin knew he had a core of captains and commanders and sergeants in the field, and he just built boys around that were going to give more energy, and he kept his core right, and he kept re-incentivising, re-motivating the better players. So I think that we're not silly in Tyrone. I think we'll know we'll have a job in our hands to get back again. So
you're saying then that there are players there who won't be motivated to come back next year, that once an All-Ireland's won, then their hunger disappears a little bit?
They want to be back next year, but there'll be players happy. It's just a natural thing. You've been striving for something for all your life from you're young when you got it. How do you go back and go through all that again? How do you go to that emotional place again? Well, you have to really go to the pit of your stomach here. I had a conversation with one of the lads there last night, and he was telling me, he says, you have to have a cause. and he had his own personal cause why he wanted to win the All Ireland. And you know, everybody has to have a cause. And it's not about ultimately about, you know, sometimes people think this is all about the game of football and you're playing for the county and all. Sometimes it's deeper in that. It goes to a personal cause of why you will do what you have to. And his cause was very personal. It's very much to do with family, and he was driving for a very personal cause. And that's, players have to have that. But that cause has been satisfied. And that's the one that's the main one. That's the one that's deep down your stomach that has driving you when the things are really tight, the one that drives you through. That's the one that's been driving you. That's gone now, because you got it. So you have to go and look for a new cause, you know. And this is where, interestingly, I had a conversation today with a friend of mine. We were talking about Tony McCoy. And like, how did Tony McCoy keep going on year after year after year and keep going to be the champion jockey? Like, why if you're champion jockey once, why do you want to do it another 20 times? Like? But he made a good point. He said, he says when he won the champion jockey, he says he was a champion jockey for that one day. And the next day he wasn't champion jockey again. So in a ruthless way, we're all Ireland champions at the moment. And I say this weekend's over, you're not any longer. You know, it's a ruthless way of looking at it. And you might say I'm sorry there here, but maybe it is, because I did notice when we won in 03, and okay, we had a tragic loss of Cormac in 04, but even with all of that, it was difficult to get the same level of hunger back. But plus everybody else was gone on for you, like, you know. So, and Brian knows this. Brian Dooher was part of that machine back then. Collie Holmes was there. Joe came in 04 thinking those boys know that they're going to have to be smart about this, you know. So they'll be right thinking, maybe not today, they'll be recovering and enjoying the day, but they'll be right starting to plot the course. How do we get this right next year again, you know? So it's great, but
yeah. Gal, do you how do you think the Tyrone come back from that?
Well, I think, didn't Ciarán McGeaney say that good teams win All Irelands, great teams win more than 2 or 3? And I think that was a comment that came back to haunt him. But yeah, how do you, once you've got to the top of the pile, you've achieved your Everest, how do you come back and do it again? Thinking of the old boxing analogy, it's hard to get up for 6 a.m. runs when you're laying in silk sheets, whereas a lot easier when you don't have anything and you have to go and do it. And that's probably where Tyrone are finding themselves. And there's absolutely no doubt about it that when I thought about it after the game, and I was just thinking about, it was actually great to see Tyrone win despite being an Armagh, and I wasn't begrudging at all. But I was thinking to myself, there's a lot of inter-county teams and players sitting at home watching this thinking, you know what, we've a real chance here. You think of the Monaghans, they were almost turned over Tyrone in that Ulster final, give it another 10 minutes, they may have done it. Think of the Derrys even, came very close to Donegal, and then obviously Donegal for a period they were on top of Tyrone. Them boys are thinking again, and the Armagh as well. Monaghan, was just a strange game when they lost in the semi-final, but they're thinking we have a chance here again, and that will motivate all of these pretenders to the crown to go out and say, you know what, let's redouble our efforts, we can do this now. And you look, Mayo, I think it's going to be very difficult to re-energise them, but Galway are looking again, you know what, Dublin, that air of invincibility is now gone. We can get at them, so everyone's not worried, there's no point in putting the effort in, we're not going to win it anyway. Dublin are going to win it. Kerry don't have that invincibility. You stop Clifford, you can go on and win in Ireland. Look at what Tyrone did. Everyone's going to be saying, but look at Tyrone, look at what Tyrone did. And everyone's gunning for Tyrone as well. But at the end of the day, the flip side of that is these boys know how to win. I talked about stature and how they've grown from the semi-final and the final. They're walking about now, and Tyrone people don't need that anymore, confidence. But they're walking around thinking we're All Ireland champions and we can go and do this again. We're the best team in the country and we're going to go out here next year and show why we are a great team. So, that really, and when we have hopefully full stadiums back, we don't have the COVID, bringing in the back door maybe again makes it even doubly harder to win in All Ireland, and it just makes for a really fascinating and really entertaining 2022. On top of all that, football's back a bit as well. Like, that final was really entertainment, top stuff, be it good or bad. It was adventurous, they showed guts. It was really entertaining spectacle, same as the Kerry game and the Dublin Mayo match as well, which has been lacking in Gaelic football for a number of years. So it's really entertaining to go and watch a Gaelic match again. So when you add all of those layers up, and I'm sure the Tyrone boys won't be thinking about it now, but bring on 2022.
Absolutely, isn't it great? I was down in Uri this year watching the Armagh, the championship match, where Armagh and Monaghan played, like it was incredible. It was nothing short of incredible. And I'm sure Armagh, if we had played in the first half, we had a bit money, then they'd crack at Tyrone. And they would love now. And Armagh have developed really, really well this last few years. And they're good players. And the Armagh Tyrone game would be a great game because there's a lot of the way Armagh play the game, that type of direct football, there's an edge in Armagh. They seem to have, I know Kieran Donaghy's brought something different to their attack. Kieran McKeever's brought an edge to their defending. They've big players now. They've Oisín and Rian and boys that are good footballers, like, you know. So that's a great. Armagh Tyrone rivalry is going to come back. Donegal will always be there. Donegal's talent is incredible, and we know that. And we're very aware of the fact that this Donegal team have been top of the street on the 21 level now, coming through the teams players. That game this year hinged on a 5-minute spell where they missed a penalty. Michael Murphy gets sent off, and the game then turned in our favour. So, and you look at the reflect on the year in Ulster, it was so many things could have happened. But I just so excited for next year. And you're right, I think the way football's changed. We're now playing, you know, it's open, it's more open now. Teams are kicking the ball, there's taking more risks. I think we've realised watching Dublin, so that Dublin played a brilliantly controlled game, but they also played a high risk game. They let the ball go, they moved it quick, and teams now are looking at that as well. So it's I think the standard is really good at the minute, and it's all augurs well for the future. It
augurs very well for the future. Paddy, thank you for coming in. I really appreciate that. And Cal, thank you for your time as well. I enjoyed that conversation, and looking forward to, as you say, next year.
That's right. Good man. Thanks.